gravity. How does gravity work? And yeah, people want to know, want to understand how gravity works, and everybody has their own idea, of course. And the only one we're going to reject here is all ideas based on particles. Okay, particles meaning pressure. Okay, no such thing. Okay, you can't produce pull with push. Okay, that's the issue. Okay, so keep that in mind. So when fellow says the following, says, no, Bill, that's not what gravity is. Gravity is not a pull force. Okay, yeah, we agree, and that's because he did not understand that. Okay, he thinks that we are saying it's a pull force, and I've said it many times already. It's not a pull. We use the word pull, okay, because we are pulled as an object. We're pulled downwards towards the center of the earth. But we're saying that every atom in our body is only under tension with the atoms on the earth. The rope is always under tension. There is no pull along the rope. And I don't know how many times to emphasize that, and people keep thinking of pull because we're used to using the word pull. I just want to clarify one more time. One atom does not pull on another atom. Okay? There's no pull along the rope. There's tension. Tension is not a pull like it is in the religion of mathematics. Okay? So let's just keep that in mind, okay? But it says, even when you think you are pulling the air into your lungs, you are not, okay? It says, the air is simply flowing from a region of high pressure to a region of low pressure. All you are doing is letting the air rush into your lungs to fill the volume by stretching your rib cage. I'm actually explaining it with a real mechanism. No, you're not. What you're doing is describing, and you don't understand that. It takes a long time for you to understand that you're not explaining anything. You're just describing. And well, let me just finish this up. It says, it's the same with gravity, electricity, and magnetism, but the field is not air. Okay, the fluid is not air. Okay, it's not some magical pull. A pull is illogical and irrational. Well, this fellow doesn't know how to argue it. Doesn't know how to talk. Okay, in science, if you're going to say it's illogical and illogical, you have to explain why you think it's irrational and illogical. But he leaves it there in his opinion. But he doesn't tell us how he justifies that opinion. So again, it shows you these are people who are not qualified to do science because they don't. I mean, if you're going to say something, back it up. And these people don't back it up. They just say something because it sounds good to them. Okay. And so, what is the problem I have with this? Well, let's go with that pulling the flow from a region of high pressure to a region of low pressure, or from high density to low density, right? So they have this idea that the molecules even out in the container, right? This is what they've been taught, and it's ingrained in them so much that they probably will not understand the argument that I'm going to make now, okay? So it's only for intelligent people what I'm going to say now, okay? Not for people like this gentleman, okay? And here it is. Here you have the Earth, and you have the different levels of air around the Earth. You have 760 torr, which is approximately, it's that's the value of our pressure here on Earth at sea level, more or less. Okay, 750, 760, and then as you go out, you can see the levels drop. You get to a very fine air, and when you go even further, you get to a point where you get to universal, or you could say solar system level pressure, and it's a very, very light pressure. There's hardly any particles there. On the moon, it's been measured at 10 to the minus 12. 10 to minus 11, 10 to minus 12 torr. Yeah, I like the word torr because I use that unit because that's what I'm familiar with. That's the one we used in semiconductor processing. It's not probably the correct one for this, but it's good enough. Because the important thing is not what that number means. It's just that I just want you to see that there's hardly any particles on the moon, on the in the atmosphere of the moon. Okay, maybe some dust that is stirred up or whatever. And then here you have the solar wind on the left-hand side, and that's in the 10 to the minus 13 torr. In other words, the solar wind is even finer, less particles per cubic meter than on the moon. So on the moon, you have a little more pressure, you could say, than with a solar wind. And so the question is, why doesn't all that high-density air, why doesn't it dissipate throughout the universe? Why is it stuck to the Earth? That's the question this fellow has to answer. Okay, here you have high density close to the center of the Earth, right, close to our surface, and you have low density as you move out. And you can see we don't need a container, which is another thing that these people have in mind. They say, oh, you need a container to have pressure. You know, they have this idea that particles hit against the walls and create this pressure. Yeah, that's true in a chamber. I worked with those quite a bit in my life, you know. But here we're talking about something that has no container. You know, the Earth is not contained immediately. You know, maybe you could say it's contained within space-time, the edges of space-time. We can even concede that. But between the Earth and the Moon, there's no object, no container that contains the air on the Earth. And so the question is, why doesn't this air dissipate and just flow out into space? If it's like he says that it goes from high density to low density. That's all he's got to explain, okay? And I hope he doesn't say, well, because of gravity. Yeah, no kidding. Okay, so that's the issue. So this notion that he says that air or molecules or whatever flows from high density to low density, that's not an explanation. That's a description. Please explain the cause, okay? What causes that to happen? Yeah, that's the question. Okay, here you have another fellow along similar lines. He says, talks about the solar wind. He says, you forgot to draw the solar wind in your absurd little animation. Aha. Do you dispute that the solar wind exists? If not, what is your justification? Okay, and again, all we can do is point to this, that the solar wind is 10 to the minus 13 torr. Okay, there's nothing there. Okay, essentially, that's probably the level, the maximum level we can achieve here on Earth with all our pumping equipment. Okay, you can maybe reach 10 to the minus 13. We used to work in a minus 7 range, and so this is about twice in orders, you know, what we used to work in the semiconductor industry. So we're talking about something. The solar wind is not a wind. These people think it's a hurricane or something. The solar wind is nothing. Okay, and so the first issue is that, you know, a lot of these flat earthers say, oh, hold it, but why don't the astronauts get killed with all these bullets that are flowing through space? And again, they think that it's a hurricane or you know, some kind of tornado or something. Who knows? The other thing that they confuse is that they confuse the solar wind, which is particles, with a magnetosphere, which is made of threads. The magnets, you know, the magnetic field, so-called field, that's comprised of threads that are swinging around. And again, that's not matter in the sense that an atom is matter. So anything like atoms and above we'll call particles, and anything below is just these threads. And so, you know, the solar wind does not really consist of magnetism, okay, which is threads. It just consists of particles, and there are very, very few particles in the solar wind. So, yeah, we don't include it because it's irrelevant to gravity. Okay, that's why we don't include it. It's and again, it just shows this individual is ignorant of the basics of physics, okay? And same fellow says the following, says, there's something ironic about a rope theorist making fun of string theory. They listen and they say, oh, rope, that sounds like string, like wire, like a cable, or any of those words, you know, synonyms. And so they say it's the same thing. You're laughing at another guy who's proposing the same thing as you are. Well, there are so many errors with what this fellow is thinking. And so let's put them up there. Here we have them. Rope is not a theory. Rope is known as a hypothesis, okay, an assumption. Theory is an explanation. A rope is an object, okay? God is not a theory. God is an assumption. That's a thing, okay? For those of you who think of God as a thing, right? As the guy with a magic wand who made the earth. That's different than God, the concept, you know, oh, God is love, oh, God is intelligence. Now you've made God into an abstract concept. That's what you're praying to, if that's what you pray to, right? So we have to distinguish concepts from objects, okay? And we're saying that rope is an object, okay? Then we have here, rope is a hypothesis, again, an assumption. String, it's not an explanation, okay? And string is 1D, which is, you know, takes it out of the realm of objects. There's no such object that is 1D or 0D, like in mathematical physics. Okay, in mathematical physics, you have singularities, you have points, and they're all 0D, no dimension whatsoever. They call these things. And then you have 1D, like lines or strings, which are, again, lines, mathematical lines, which they convert into physical things, you know. So a string is not like the rope. The rope is 3D. Okay, three-dimensional. Okay, let's get that right. The string is one-dimensional because it's a mathematical concept. It's not a thing. They're not going to do anything with this string. They will, but it's all BS because it's a concept. 1D. Okay, 1D concept. String theory is a math description. Okay, it's not a physical entity. Okay, and they should call it the loopy theory. Why? Because they have these loops, which I showed the other day. I'm going to show it one more time here. That they break and they weld, constantly. They're constantly welding and opening up magically because they don't explain the process. I mean, we don't know if they're sewed together, they are pasted together, glue. They don't explain the process of why these things open up and close up. Okay, that's different than the rope model. Okay, rope model, it's just a rope, it just torques. Okay, that's different than, there's nothing there that is magical in that sense. That we're not saying that the rope breaks and comes together or anything like that. Okay, but that's what they're saying in string theory. Okay, and loops break and weld. What's the mechanism again? Gravitons reside in a hidden dimension. Remember, what's his name? Brian Cox. He was saying that the reason we don't see gravitons is they go to a different dimension. How do you pull with gravitons? Okay, that's the other question you got to answer. Okay, show me the mechanism that you're going to use to to pull with discrete particles. How do you pull? And again, you can't say high density to low density, this absorption idea that these people have, because they cannot explain it with that. Okay. And here, let me show you what Matt Dowd said the other day concerning this. And he said, look, this is a pair of kinks in the string are whipped back and forth by the oscillating string, and the incredible mass in these kinks causes them to radiate gravitational waves, and so they slowly decay away. And what did Brian Cox tell us? Well, he says they decay away into unseen dimensions. Okay, so you figure out what they're trying to say there. Looks like that does look like magic. That is magic, and that's what you're receiving from the establishment. Okay, same fellow says, if oceans only push one way, then what about riptide? Poor people. Okay, let me show you a riptide. Here, I'll illustrate it for you. Okay, here's the riptide, okay? Here's a river, and the question is the river pulling or pushing on the logs? Okay, where's the riptide there? Okay, and the same with the riptide that this fellow's talking about. In other words, the riptide that's produced by the moon. Okay, the tide goes back. The question is, are you being pulled or are you being pushed by water particles? Okay, is there a vacuum being produced and that's why you fall? Okay, these are the questions you need to answer. And so let me show you here what causes the tides. That's where this fellow should begin so that he can talk intelligently. And here it is. This is from NASA. And you can see what causes the tides. And it's the moon. They say it's gravity, whatever gravity is. The moon is pulling through nothing at the water. Okay, and the question is, how does the moon do that? Okay, is the moon in contact with the water, or is it black magic? Meaning the moon is not in contact, but somehow affects it from action at a distance, from, again, by magic. So that's the first question he's got to answer. He's got to answer, how does the moon produce the tide? Okay, that's where he's got to explain the pull that you see there. Okay, and here's what causes the tide. You can see different tides, different parts of the year. And the sun also plays a role in there, okay, because, when you have the sun and the moon on the same axis, well, you have probably more pull, like there, okay? Whereas when you have it on the other side, well, they're pulling in different directions, 90 degrees to each other, okay? So, that gives you an idea what causes the tides, how it's done, how Mother Nature does that, okay? And that's what what this fellow needs to understand. First, explain the tides, then you can explain the rip tide, how you get pulled into the water, if that's what's happening. Are you being pushed by the water? Or are you being pulled by the water? Like the logs there. Okay, and same fellow says, insistent. He says, passing your hand through the rope sounds like black magic to me. Yeah, because they're always thinking of touch. Okay, they've got touch in their minds. Okay, and he continues, and he says the following. He says, Connecting objects with ropes does not explain where the pull between objects comes from. You can try it yourself by connecting two dead elephants with ropes. Nothing will happen. Again, has all these notions of touch. He has to introduce touch in there when we say you can't touch the rope, okay? The twirling rope animation makes no sense given that the Earth does not spin on an axis pointing towards the sun and vice versa. You can't recreate that animation in reality using real spheres and ropes. An animation that is not consistent with reality is worthless. And so, what can we say? We got to show them, what the same argument that we use against Einstein. Okay, here it is. Okay, here you have different parts, different planets. Okay, you have the moon and the Earth. They're on the same axis. So the moon causes these blackouts, which we call eclipses, right? Because it stands behind, at some point, it stands between the Earth and the sun, okay? And so it essentially, the moon goes approximately on the same plane as the Earth. When you move to Oberon, which is one of the moons of Uranus, the moon goes over the pole of Uranus towards the sun and away from it. Not like the moon there, our moon, which goes approximately on the same plane as the equator, more or less, close to it. This one goes over the poles. And then when you look at Charon, the moon of Pluto, what you see is that it's got this bullseye pattern with respect to the sun. Okay? And my point here is that, the spin of the planet is unrelated to the threads to the ropes that are being that are holding every atom of the Earth, for example, to every atom of the sun. The sun twirls the Earth around itself. That's the orbit, but that's not what causes the spin. Okay, and again, what you see in these other cases again has to do with the spin of the planet. In other words, the Earth spins the moon around itself. In other words, the moon orbits the Earth because the Earth swings it around. The same goes with Uranus, and the same goes with Charon, okay, Pluto and Charon. So the spin itself is not the cause of, or in reverse. You can't say that the rope causes the spin, okay? It's the fact that every atom on Earth is connected to every atom of the sun only explains the orbit of the Earth, not why the Earth spins on its axis, which is spins at a 24-degree angle or whatever. Okay, so you got to separate spin from orbit. Okay? And a fellow has to understand these basic things of physics, and he doesn't. He's just thinking that he's making a great contribution to science by criticizing something that he doesn't understand. Okay, here we have another fellow, and he says, technically there are many things we've said that just move and nothing is in contact with them. So he's saying that things move, but not always is there something in contact with them. Okay, atoms moving in the void from Greek thought. They move and nothing is contacting or forcing them to. Okay, well, we could go on with several things that are wrong with his train of thought. Let's just get to the basic one, and that is the following. When you see the Earth rolling around the sun, okay, if something did not deflect, change the direction of the Earth would just go straight. So yeah, it's moving, but if nothing changes it, nothing comes in contact with the Earth, it would continue to go straight and straight out of the solar system. But that's not what we observe or what we measure or whatever. That's what we know, we understand. That's not this description that we have out there. Okay? This is what we have. We have that the Earth continues to roll around in circles, more or less, around the sun. Okay, and so the question is, what causes the Earth to change direction? That's the million-dollar question. So this is a simple one that he should be able to answer, because he's saying nothing comes in contact with the Earth. Well, if nothing comes in contact, why is it changing its direction if Newton says unless something comes in contact with the Earth, okay, or any object that's moving in a given direction, it will not change that direction. The only reason it changes that direction is because something, a thing, comes in contact with the Earth, okay? So what is it that comes in contact with the Earth? Well, here you have it, okay? It's the threads, the ropes, okay? And so the sun swings the earth around by these ropes. Every atom on the earth is connected to every atom of the sun. And now we can explain very easily why the earth changes its direction every second. Okay, it moves more or less in a circle. Okay, and so now you have that something. The something is ropes. You don't want to put ropes in there, no problem. Tell me what physical object forces the earth to change direction. And you say, well, nothing, because we can't see, we can't touch anything out there. And then what you're doing is you're doing black magic. That is black magic, because you're saying there's action at a distance and there's nothing in physical contact with the skin of the earth, and yet the skin of the earth is moving in a circle. It's changing its direction constantly. Okay, so that's what you got to answer. Okay? Hopefully you don't say space-time, because space-time is what? A concept. Okay, a bunch of coordinates. That's all the space-time is. And we're getting there also. Here we have, if you got a relativist video to criticize here, okay? I got a relative. Yeah, I've seen this video and I've seen others similar to that, and they talk about 3D scenario for space-time rather than the 2D scenario. Okay, so let's go with that so that you know what I'm talking about. Okay, here it is. I went to the site, and this is what the site has. And the important thing here is that it has 2.3 million views, and the site itself has almost 500,000 subscribers. And the question is, with 113,000 right upvotes, and this is what they're going to show. They're going to show this 3D space-time, and instead of the Earth just weighing it down, what you're going to have is all this 3D space-time moving towards the center of the Earth. That's what they're going to show. Okay, and so you can see how many people get sucked in by this nonsense, and they just believe it, and they don't even know what they're believing in. Okay, they just tangentially capture some idea there and say, oh, okay, I understand what they're saying. They didn't understand squat. Okay, here it is. Okay, so here's the 2D space-time. Okay, the typical one. You have the little Earth going around the sun, and these fellows are saying that's not the way it really works. Okay, that's silly. The bending of space-time downwards. Okay, and by the way, this is what all mathematical physicists believe in. That's what they describe. But this fellow says, oh, I know more than all of them put together, because that's not the case. This is ridiculous. You cannot really use this as an analogy for what's happening out there. Okay? So how is he going to show the rotation then? Okay? Because that's what we want to understand. Okay? We want to understand why the Earth doesn't go flying out of the solar system. And of course, he's not going to explain that. He's just going to try to explain gravity to you. And he said, no, gravity works in a different way. It works this way. And here you see it. He illustrates it. He says, look, the Earth is sucking all this space-time, out of the space, I don't know, out of the fourth dimension, fifth dimension, sucking it into its center. Okay, it just absorbs it. And that's what all these people have in mind. They say it absorbs particles, it absorbs space-time, it absorbs gravitons, whatever it's absorbing, it's all going towards the center of the Earth. Okay, because you let go of your pen and it falls to the center of the Earth. So he says this explains it. See, that would explain why the pen falls to the Earth, to the center of the Earth. Okay, so let's see if they can answer this. First, you can see that he's not explaining why the Earth doesn't flow out of the solar system, which is the main point. The other one explains why the Earth doesn't go out of the solar system. It's ridiculous, but it explains that. It says, look, the Earth is rolling or sliding along this time warp. The time is warped around it, and the Earth, the skin of the Earth is coming in contact with this warped time. Okay, that's the answer. Here you won't see that. There's no explanation for why the Earth doesn't go out of the solar system. But then here's a situation. Here we have all these planets, okay, and stars, whatever you want to put in there, okay? You can put anything you want. And what it's doing, every one of them is sucking towards the center of the planet, okay? And so the question is, if it's going towards the center of the planet, where's the slack coming from, okay? That's is it pulling space-time out of what? Because they're all pulling towards themselves. Are they ripping space-time apart? Is that what's happening here? And again, what you need to understand, above all, is that what you're staring at, really, when you're looking at all these lines, is you're looking at this. You're looking at coordinates, which I discussed the other day. That's what space-time is. It's just a set of coordinates, okay? And that's what these people are saying is being sucked in, coordinates. That's what you're staring at. That's what all those lines are, okay? And so you're looking at this, and that's being sucked in. And so the question is, here you have space-time. This is what another fellow illustrated, right? And you have the space-time being dragged towards the center. It doesn't explain where that extra space-time is coming from. Okay, are you ripping it from space-time itself? From what? And then it doesn't explain at all why the Earth does not fly out of the solar system. How do you explain that part? Okay, how does this explain that? The orbit of the Earth. And so, yeah, and people just put likes and oh, I liked it. I thought they were right. The two-dimensional version of space-time is irrational, but this one's more irrational. They don't realize that.